and this is our plan of attack.
Banks have become an essential threat to our democracy. So consider this justice.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported radio station on the internet. Please help support this station so this battle can continue forward. Revolution Radio! Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Any commercial advertising you may hear in this program is of the sole discretion and benefit of the host of whose program you are listening to. Revolution Radio does not endorse any commercial products, nor does it accept monetary compensation for on-air advertising of commercial products, nor will it ever. We are and shall remain 100% listener supported. Any product advertising on this program are considered used at buyer risk, and Revolution Radio shall not be held liable for any claims or damages received from any product advertised within this program. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
It happens more often than we can imagine. In my case, I was sitting at home, and out of nowhere, I just started feeling uncomfortable. Then it got worse, and I started perspiring. I tried to ignore it, but I waited too long. The chest pain came as we were driving to the hospital emergency. I felt my life clock begin to tick. I barely survived. There was lots of damage done to my heart. What do I do now? I was lucky. I took a leap of faith and tried a 7-herb formula with hawthorn, garlic, cayenne, and more called Extendivite. Herbs have been used for thousands of years to keep us healthy. If you're not using Extendivite as a preventative supplement, maybe it's time to start. To order, call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendivite.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Do you feel as if you don't belong? Do you know you were meant for something more? Well, you were. Knowledge of who you are and where you really are from is within your reach. Join Janet Carol Lessin and Dr. Sasha Lessin as they search for the answers as they open up the Stargate to the cosmos.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Stargate to the Cosmos. I'm your host, Janet Carol Lessin, with my co-host, Dr. Sasha. Alex Lessin, our producer, is Thomas Becker. We're on Revolution Radio, and our special guest is Brad Olsen. And Brad and his lovely lady Emily went down to South America and all the way down to the Antarctic. And he's going to tell us what happened on that journey, because Brad is a award-winning author and speaker at all these conferences like Contact in the Desert and Awareness Life Expo and 5D events, and he's been at our events too. And he's going to tell us what's going on down there, which we'll find out in just a minute. But before we bring on Brad, I want to bring on Dr. Sasha Lessin. How you doing today, sweetheart?
I'm doing fine. I'm very interested in especially the South American stuff, because I've been studying ancient Sumerian stuff from Sitchin and everything. And he says, that he brought over first Adad or Viracocha and Unearthed were building an alternate spaceport at Tiwanaku, and they've brought over people from east of Eden, the descendants of KN, and so they were so-called people. They weren't Indians. They were people. They were black people that then Toth brought them into Central America. So way, way, way before this, American Indians supposedly came across the Bering Strait and took thousands of years to get down to the Tierra del Fuego. There were people there, and so Brad, you're there. And I know that a lot of the South American people are really open about their visitors, which they're still getting. And so I really want to hear about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey guys, nice to hear your voices, and thanks for having me on your show.
Oh, we're so excited you're here. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up South America, Sasha, because that to me was equally fascinating as much as Antarctica was. And I agree with you. There were people there. And the way it's being redated now, and I was very fortunate to have been a guest speaker with Nassim Harriman's trip, and Brian Forrester was one of the guest speakers too, to travel through all these sites in Peru and Bolivia with those two and a lot of other really smart people, and redating everything. Like you said, people there are much longer, probably from Lemuria or some high advanced civilization. And you see signs of that evidence all over the place with the megalithic buildings, which in that area of the Sacred Valley in Cuzco, all the way up to Machu Picchu, is the most densely populated area of the world with megalithic buildings. So it's very special and very mysterious in the way that those constructions were put together.
Right. Now that they have the sonar, the LiDAR, they can see, they're uncovering these huge cities that are like the size of New York, right?
It just keeps going on, yeah. And even in the Amazon, they're using radar that penetrates through the trees and into the ground and finding never before known ancient cities. So the dating goes way back, and Nassim Harriman and Brian Forrester, myself, and others in our group who study these things would all agree that there was a pre-Inca civilization that built the largest megaliths. Oftentimes, our tour group would be right next to a regular Incan scholar who would basically, or tour guide who was reading the script, would say that it was all built by Inca. And then right next to us is Brian and Nassim saying, oh no, it is much older, and the Inca recognized that they had predecessors. And it's really only in Tiwanaku, and I'm glad you brought that up too, because that is the only site that is recognized as being 100% pre-Incan. But I would say all the other megaliths, that style continues over, and those are all pre-Inca as well. And then you see inferior brickwork design on top of the really finely cut megalithic stones.
Yeah.
Right. So the later civilizations were trying to mimic what happened earlier, and they just lacked the sophistication to duplicate it. Is that what you're saying?
Yep. Exactly.
Well, the thing is that in some of the Sumerian stuff, they really talk about this is like an international intergalactic gateway. And on the wall there, Childress says, there's grays, there's cone heads. It's like several different people basically would come through Tiwanaku, go through the gate and take off from Nazca if they had that kind of craft. And it was just part of a larger system. And as Marduk, after the bombing of Sodom and Gomorrah, got control of Eurasia, most of the Royal Anunnaki just moved their operations to Central and South America.
And it sure shows. It's very evident in the stonework, because not only is it megalithic, even cyclopean in size, which is the largest classification of hewn stone that has been carved, or in some cases, as we saw, looks like they had a technique of liquidification of the stone, not completely in a liquid form, but kind of in a cold plasma state, as described by Nassim Haramein. And this is still technology that we're not privy to. So that's what makes it so fascinating. But all of these oldest stones, and they're always the oldest, and they're always in the best condition, and they're always holding together much better than the newer works, you see no chisel marks, and you see precisely cut lines that are so tight together at all these odd angles. And then you have the pillowing effect, or the marshmallowing of the stone, where it's like it's coming into a dried state and a little bit is still liquid, and then gravity makes these little knobs and then pillows out on the lower parts of the stones. So they even look like they've just been liquefied. And then the fact that you cannot find any chisel or stone cutting work, or even the tools or the method of moving these giant blocks, is what makes it utterly fascinating. And then the biggest blocks still would have a difficult time with even the most sophisticated cranes we have today. So clearly we're talking about lost technology in stonework and possibly auditive levitation, the movement of large, heavy objects by using auditive sounds to match the harmonics of the object and levitate it and move it from quarry to site.
That's the same kind of reports we get from Rapa Nui, and of using sonar. And Michael Tellinger has found some instruments, maybe the stuff that were blown at Jericho by Joshua and his trumpeters were really implying some of that kind of technology. The other thing is that we now have something called greens gas. We know that, for example, Angkor Wat has a mile-long continuous, and what it did is that sandstone that they basically turned to a liquid form and poured into a mold. Since people have got the idea, and that's the thing about us humans, once we get the idea, we can sort of figure out how do you get to there. And so there's a lot to be learned. And I wish I could be there and touch some of those great big stones.
You got to make a trip there and see them. They're amazing.
Do they seem to be the scale of an average human today, or does it seem that the scale might be for beings that were larger?
That's a great question, Janet. I've done a lot of research and spoken on the giants of old, and it would make sense that another larger human-like species would have made some of these. For one, sometimes the stairs are much larger than for our size humans. But on the other hand, then there's also this whole notion of these elongated skulls have been found on these sites that have larger craniums than we do, and presumably larger bodies. So they are kind of blending the lines between human and alien construction. And the fact that they have found elongated skulls at Sacsayhuaman not too long ago, only about 10 years ago, when they did a dig there, and also have found them in the Sacred Valley. We went and visited the Ronaldo, the archaeologist, uncovered the baby that has a head as big as the torso. We saw that one at the museum in Andialas in the Sacred Valley. I'm not pronouncing that quite right, but it's a museum that's devoted to elongated skulls. And then you see diagrams of them in other museums, including Tiwanaku.
Are they only getting the skulls, or are they getting the skeletons? Or, like you mentioned the baby, but are the adult skeletons being retrieved as well?
Not always. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. There's more bodies down in Paracas, near where Brian Forster is based out of, and they have found bodies there. But in some cases, they do just find the skulls, and they're the elongated skulls that have 30% or sometimes more cranial capacity than a normal human. And I don't care how many times you band it up or smash a board against the skull to deform it, you cannot create extra cranial capacity. That's just impossible. So these skulls are just much larger than human skulls are. So they must be something else.
Yeah, your description.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Your turn, honey. Go ahead.
Your description of a large head with a small body fits that of Lagash, the royal cemetery there where Princess Puabi was buried, and he's now in the British Museum, the one that Sishin was trying to find out, but its description was the same. A head that was way big for the size of the body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what's so interesting about this one, the only one that we saw in a museum, a lot of them just get swooped away, like we have our Smithsonian gate here that took care of most of the large skeletons found in the mounds of North America. They do it there too, and it's mostly, my understanding is the church is somewhat behind it too, that they find it like superstitious or counter to some of their Christian beliefs, and they would just rather get rid of the evidence or not display it. So it's only the rare case of this museum that has one of the specimens, because it was found by the same archaeologist that works at that museum. So that's the only way you get to see him these days. And they have tried to shut him down on several occasions. He calls it, the baby is called Waikui. And it's behind a glass case, and you can see it. And it is a perfect example of a small child. It was basically ritual sacrificed in the high mountains across from this little town, which has a city square, just like a Spanish town, really cute, picturesque, with a Sistine Chapel-like church with paintings. And then right next to it is the museum. But then up on the hill is where they found some other royal burials, including this child of only a couple years old, and then it showed that it had been executed, that it was struck from the back of the head and cracked the skull. But some of the hair and some of the skin even remains, and they have done some DNA testing on it, and it has some human in it, but it's also some extraterrestrial unknown DNA.
Oh, okay. I was going to ask that. You beat me to that. So how many of the skulls have been analyzed? Only that one, or what's going on with the
Paracas Museum has the largest amount of them, and I know Brian Forrester and some people he works with have been testing them. I think most part the results are not in. We're hoping that this year at Contact in the Desert, Brian's going to make some announcements about what's been found, but I think it would correspond with what was the result of the Star Child skull that Lloyd Pye used to travel around with, and that was tested, and it too had human parent on one side and an unknown DNA sample on the other. So this is a pretty common theme whenever you have these skulls that do not fit the Homo sapien DNA skull structure.
Wow. So tell us about your tour. What made you decide to do that? What was your purpose? Where did you go? What did you accomplish? Did you meet your goals?
I did indeed, and we had a very successful trip without any injury or arrests or even a ticket from a traffic cop, because I bought an SUV in Santiago, Chile, right at the beginning of November 2018. Just a few weeks after Stargate to the Cosmos conference, when I saw you guys both last, and you knew we were going. And so, yeah, we got down there, and Emily and I, and and I bought this SUV from a guy who really needed to sell it because he drove it all the way down from Quebec, Canada. So we had Quebec plates on a Ford Expedition, but the guy built it out. So it had a bed in it already. It had a mattress and pillows. We had a pull-out stove that had a cable gas cord that went to a propane tank that he had on the roof. I mean, everything worked for us, even a refrigerator that plugged in and didn't have ice, as well as everything you can imagine for the car. So we totally scored because we didn't have to do any work on it. Just took about a week to get our papers together. And then we had to race up to go meet the Nassim group by middle November. And we got there just in time. But it took us 6-7 days to go from Santiago, Chile to Cuzco, Peru. And that's across about 2,000 kilometers or more, including a mountain pass that was 16,600 feet. When I was coming up and over from Arequipa on the high desert down to the Sacred Valley. So this is just the first week of driving. And then we had another 16 days with the Resonance Academy group, Nassim Haramein, Brian Forster, although he left about halfway through. Then we carried on down to Lake Titicaca and met up with some of the people after the group ended and did an ayahuasca ceremony. That was pretty amazing.
Ooh, yeah.
First time for me, right on the lakes of Lake Titicaca too. It was just amazing. And then Emily and I got back in the car and we just started driving south through Bolivia to the Salar de Uyuni, the giant salt flat, and then cross the border in Argentina, and then about 5,000 kilometers from the top to the bottom of Argentina. That's about 3,500 miles. So on Christmas Day, we were driving all day. That was a driving day. But it was cool because we saw some Christmas relevers and this and that. And we had our own special ceremony. And then so I was on coast to coast in Bariloche on summer solstice down there, winter solstice up here, describing the trip to Antarctica. And that was our goal. So then we carried on and we got all the way down to Ushuaia, Argentina, after taking the ferry over the Magellan Straits and driving straight through Terra del Fuego. And we got there on December 27th and had no ticket, no passage either. So we just started inquiring around and then found out that the sailboats that are going to Antarctica that are all tied off at a different pier than the one with all the big cruise ships. So we found that, went over there and just started inquiring and eventually found a boat. But we had to wait 2 weeks in Ushuaia before we could leave for Antarctica. And that date was on January 16th. And then we were gone all through the rest of January and got back on February 10th. So 26 days on a sailboat. And I left the car in Ushuaia, and we got back in the car and started driving up through Terra del Fuego and then southern Patagonia, and got to see all the mountainscapes of southern Patagonia, the really amazing ones. And then I was able to sell the car there too. And then we just took a bus back to Buenos Aires and popped over on the ferry for a week in Uruguay, and only on the very beginning of the trip and the very end did we have any beach days. So when we were driving up along Chile, we had some beach weather, and then at the very end in Uruguay. The whole time we were either up in the Altiplano or in the middle of Argentina or on a boat to Antarctica, and didn't really get to enjoy the summer down there. But it was an incredible trip.
It's amazing. You just have this incredible luck that everything works out for you all the time. You blow my mind.
Oh, it's more than luck.
Blind faith.
Yeah. Well, I have a good way with traveling. I got my start in writing as a travel writer and did years on the road. And yeah, I'm no stranger to it. So it was good to get back to it. And yes, why I did it. Well, when life throws you lemon, you make lemonade. And almost a year ago to the day, I just got a no-fault eviction on my San Francisco rent-controlled apartment with a new owner moving in, and they're allowed to take an apartment, and you can't really fight it. So I was out 1 year ago and put all my stuff in storage up here near Tahoe, where I'm at now and where I want to buy a place. And I had my eye on a place a year ago, and it just went into escrow when I got back up here. And I'm like, well, maybe the universe is telling me something. Maybe I should use this settlement I got and my savings and head on down there. So when I spoke at Contact in the Desert last year, I had just bought my ticket and I committed to it. And I said, I'm going. And then I met Emily, and she had the time and got the same ticket, and we went together.
Wow, amazing. Sasha, any questions?
Yeah, I want to know about Thwaites. I want to know about the glaciers that are tumbling into this southern seas. I want to know all about that.
Oh, sure. Yeah, happy to tell you about that. We were coming across the Drake Passage, which was such rough seas, the roughest seas in the world. And we got a little bit of a late start on the first day because the keel was in the mud, so we couldn't leave until the evening. And then by the time the next day on the Beagle Channel, oh, this is great, dolphins swimming by and penguins and calm seas and beautiful scenery. Then that evening we turned into the Drake, into very, very rough seas. And 2/3 of the boat got seasick, including Emily and myself. I lost 25 pounds on this trip because of being seasick and throwing everything up and dry heaving. And it was like fasting for 5 days. And then when I started eating, a smaller appetite than before. And still to this day, I don't eat as much as I did before. It just kind of did something to my stomach, yeah. And I've only gained back a few pounds. But for the most part, getting down there, the first thing we saw, Sasha, were the icebergs. And they were massive. And then we had to start going on watch, even though we were just getting over seasickness. It was really important to have someone behind the wheel of the ship and one or two of us looking for icebergs. And there were certain times when we were going slowly through some of the channels of Antarctica that we had to be out there with poles to push away the icebergs from the boat.
Wow.
But that was part of the adventure, and that's what we signed up for. We were not going as guests or tourists. We're signing up as crew. And we had assignments and we had chores to do and help clean the boat from time to time and go on these watches at all hours of the day, including in the middle of the night, and sometimes in very inhospitable weather. So there was a learning curve to all this, and there was certainly tolerance to be able to do it. And it's not for everyone, at least not 14 people on a sailboat, which is the way we went. But the upside is when we got there, then we had a Zodiac boat, which is a little raft dinghy, and we could go zipping around. We could go right up to whales sometimes, or climb on the glaciers sometimes, or tour around within the glacier. So we got a very intimate way of spending our time down in Antarctica because of this dinghy and a smaller craft with a captain who really wanted to see the sights as much as we did. So he would take us into narrow channels and around islands and stuff that no cruise boat ever goes. So we really did get a very special trip out of the whole excursion.
Well, was the crew and the other participants, were they international or?
Yeah, they were all Polish. There were 11 Polish, and they picked up one other American guy. So it's 3 Americans and 11 Poles. And half of those Poles could not speak much English, and the other half pretty good English. But we all got along really great, and there was no conflicts among anyone. And we all ended up really good friends, and we're all on Facebook now and watching each other's lives. And it's like, wow, great. Yeah, we all went to Antarctica together. I'll probably never see you guys again, but hey, we shared a great moment.
What a bonding experience.
Yeah.
So did you see any craft? Everybody's talking about the base, the craft.
See any under the ice or flying over negative
or
to
anything.
Well, you guys know me. This is why I went down there. This is my curious nature, is to ask questions and to talk to anyone I can. And the Q&A began when we got to Ushuaia, because once we met the captain who was going to take us down there, he invited us to a party at the yacht club in Ushuaia on New Year's Eve. And Emily and I had a great time there, stayed up all night with them. And I talked to as many sea captains as I could, and I talked to several, including one guy who's been taking trips down there for 20 years. And he didn't know anything about this. And my line of questioning would be, we've heard there's some really abnormal things about Antarctica, perhaps craft under the ice, perhaps there's antediluvian civilization under the ice, pyramids poking through, and sea captain after sea captain said they never heard anything of it. Then we went down to the stations, the research stations, and I talked to sometimes even the station chief at Palmer Base and Bernansky and Arktowski, and asked them the same questions. And it just kept coming back, no. Nobody heard anything, didn't know anything about it. Sounds interesting, wish it were true. Sounds like the movie The Thing, but didn't know. And finally, we got to the Argentinian base called Brown, and they have other bases throughout Antarctica. And just keep in mind, Antarctica is a huge continent. It's the 5th largest continent in the world, and the distances are extraordinarily vast. The climate is extraordinarily inhospitable, and the distances to travel to go between place and place is very great. So we were just at the northern tip for about 500 miles along the Palmer Peninsula on that finger of land that sticks out from Antarctica, which is known as Western Antarctica. And there are really 2 continents. The big, large polar plateau rests upon Eastern Antarctica, and that's an ancient continent. That broke off from Pangaea, and it's over 3 billion years old. It's one of the oldest continents on this planet. And it has fossil records, dinosaur bones, tropical plants and trees and insects in the fossil record. It's really fascinating that this had once been a tropical climate. It's absolutely proven. And it's been known ever since Shackleton and Scott tried to reach the South Pole. One of the reasons the Scott expedition failed and all 5 of them died is because they were carrying 15 kilos of fossils to bring back to the British Museum, and they basically starved to death and ran out of energy and food and died of exposure. So it's been known that this has been a tropical continent, so it would raise speculation that there is something under the ice, possibly even at Atlantis. But my line of questioning couldn't get us anywhere until we got to the Brown base. And you asked about craft. Well, at first the girl's like, I don't know if we should tell them. And the guy's like, should we? And we're like, tell us what? You got to tell us now. And then the girl's like, well, I'm not going to say anything. And the guy's like, okay. What happened was at another one of our bases called Belgrano 2 around December of last year, and this was about a month later when we were talking to them, they said that people at the Belgrano 2 base did see some craft moving at very high speed. What kind of craft, I asked, disc shape, and also accompanied with orbs. What kind of orbs, I asked, of a light nature. And I guess most of the people at the Belgrano 2 base had seen it, and then the chatter among other bases and research stations, the word got out and it got to these 2, and then they told us. So it does appear that sometimes they do see some things that are paranormal. But the other thing is most of the people that work down there are seasonal, and a lot of them are first timers. So it would kind of make sense that they wouldn't know anything, nor would they be briefed on it, especially if their specialty is like marine biologist. They wouldn't get a visit from the Secret Service.
Brad, I was just wondering, did you talk to anyone who had any notion of the Battle of the Weddell Sea in 1947?
Oh, absolutely. I know about that. You do mean Operation Highjump, when it was confronted by a force that came out of the water, presumably from Antarctica, and confronted Admiral Byrd's. Surely I asked those questions, and one of the sea captains on New Year's Eve even told me that he had been to that area of New Schwabenland, and him and some of his friends were fortune seekers and were trying to find the darts that the Luftwaffe dropped from the plane to demark the area of New Schwabenland. So he didn't know about Base 211 or New Berlin Base, but that is presumably what Operation Highjump was going to do, is confront those fugitive Nazis at Base 211. And according to the book Dark Sun, which I read right before Dark Star by Henry Stevens, he goes into great detail about that battle and some other data points that I've heard about it, including the Russian documentary about Antarctica, which is fascinating. It's in all subtitles, but it was like a History Channel show in Russia. And it said that there were even witnesses from Operation Highjump who later talked, as well as Admiral Byrd himself, that said, we are confronted with an enemy that can fly pole to pole at extreme speeds, after being confronted by some kind of craft that destroyed one of the ships. And the Russian documentary says it's the USS Murdoch, spelled like Rupert Murdoch. And basically it was cut in half with a laser. And as you mentioned, this is the Battle of Wad El Sea in 1947, and we still don't have technology that could laser cut a destroyer in half. Well, they only destroyed the one ship, presumably to send a message to Admiral Byrd and everybody else, don't mess with us, because we couldn't shoot down their craft. And they did take out all of the aircraft that came down in Operation Highjump. None of those planes made it back, but they let the ships and the submarines return, and a hasty retreat was made 2 months into the 6-month Operation Highjump expedition. And then Admiral Byrd, on the way back, let it leak to a Chilean newspaper reporter when they're stopping in for refueling that they had been confronted by this enemy with very high-tech craft. So that is a very fascinating account of Antarctica, and it also ties in to some fugitive Nazis in South America. And that was another area of our research and travels, was to go to some of these locations where some of these presumed Nazis had escaped to after the war, including Hitler himself. And I took the tour of the Eden Hotel, which is in La Falda, Argentina, just above Cordoba. There's like a small mountain range in the middle of Argentina. I didn't know about it till I was there. A lot of us think of the Andes Mountains, but not these other mountains. And they look just like the Bavarian Alps, and there's German restaurants everywhere. And
oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, to the T. The Germans got all the money there in Argentina, and then they became Argentinians, just like most Europeans became Argentinians, mostly Italians. It's mostly Italian descent. There's hardly any indigenous people left in Argentina or Chile. Like 99% are Europeans. And so the joke is, well, who are the Argentinians then? And they say it's Italians who speak Spanish that wish they were as rich as the Germans. And the Germans did keep all the money, and they built very lavish estates up here near La Falda. So I took the tour of the Eden Hotel, where there are pictures of Hitler with the owners, the Eichhorns. They were very close donors and would go to Germany for the big parades and stuff, and had special access to Hitler. So after the war, the FBI were watching the place, and they said if he were ever to escape, this is the kind of place he would go to. And in fact, History Channel did a documentary on Hitler surviving the war, and they interviewed chambermaids and people who were young adults at the time working there that still have a living memory of the guy. And now they're elderly, but they still live around La Falda. So I asked the tour guide at the end of the trip, I'm like, well, what do you think? Do you think he was ever here? And he's like, oh, yeah, absolutely. Everybody in the town knows it. It's you guys in the West that find this so hard to believe, but we basically know it, and we've been living with these fascists and fascist governments like the Perón government for decades. And then they had the dirty war in the 1980s, where thousands of young men and husbands and brothers just disappeared. And to this day, they still do vigils in Buenos Aires of all the mothers, have a candlelight vigil on Thursdays. So the pain of fascism in these South American countries is still very evident.
They threw people out of airplanes.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they did. They kidnapped them and threw them out of airplanes.
On the dirty war. Yeah, it was nasty. Really, really, yeah. So the fact that the Nazis could have been harboring both in South America and the bases in Antarctica doesn't surprise me at all. But you know, Sasha, that Operation Highjump is still a classified mission. To this day, you cannot do Freedom of Information and get any information from the government on Highjump. They won't release
the evidence has mounted up so very much that it really came down to Dulles making a deal to take in the top Nazis and after debriefing them to disperse them throughout the population. So now they run the military-industrial complex in the United States to this day.
To this day. I mean, this is really the Fourth Reich that came to America, both of the Americas, South and North America. And it shows how America turned a blind eye. And I wanted to point your listeners in the direction of the FBI website called The Vault, part of their website, where they have declassified a lot of documents. There are over 200 documents pertaining to Hitler and top-ranking officials fleeing Germany, faking their own deaths in some cases, like Hitler and Eva Braun, and coming over here with disguises and protection and a lot of money. You know, Martin Bormann, who also kept popping up throughout South America into the 1950s, he was the number 2 guy at the end of the war. He controlled all the wealth. And a lot of that wealth has never been recovered after World War II, including priceless paintings, artifacts such as the Spear of Destiny, and much gold bullion and a lot of assets left the country and then just were redispersed. And that's also the Fourth Reich that stuck around and stayed in power, but like as an intelligence power, not as a superpower with armies, but more like their spies and their money and their high-tech craft that was shepherded out of Germany before the war ended through these larger U-boat submarines, including the Führer convoy, where it was like a container ship worth of parts that they could get down to Antarctica or other large estates that they had bought up in Chile and Argentina, I found out about. And to this day, they're still very restricted area, just hundreds and hundreds of acres that are owned by somebody that bought up the land in the mid-1940s, and nobody really knows anything about them. So the mystery continues to this day, and perhaps even the ramifications of this hidden third force power that's been out there the whole time, pitting us against the Soviets, making us enemies with those guys and not going after them because they knew where to find them. They just didn't do it. So I think when the Mossad picked off Eichmann, it really shook them up a bit and say, hey, you guys better stop doing that because we're going to create some problems if you don't. And Eichmann was the only one who was ever captured in South America, brought back to Israel, tried, and put to death for his crimes, and rightfully so. But nobody else got plucked out of there, and some big names died a natural death. I hate to say it, but some of the top Third Reichs got away with it and lived out their lives.
And some of the people like Mengele actually ran a project, in New York, where many people were sent to further death and having their minds split into altars. Some of them permanently damaged and killed. And it's like these are the worst people that were given civilian clearances who had practiced genocide on the Gypsies and the Jews and the Poles.
Terrible, terrible. And even in the Lonely Planet Guide, we'd be going through this a Bolivian town, and I'm reading about what to see, and there's an old sawmill, and Klaus Barbie, the butcher of Lyon, he lived behind the sawmill and lived out his natural life. It's like, how did these guys get away with it for decades? And even Lonely Planet writes about them. Oh, you want to go hunt Nazis? Well, follow the Lonely Planet. We'll show you where they all hid out.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was well aware of that. I worked with a woman who her family came up from Venezuela or something like that, and her dad was a Nazi shot down. So, and they came up to work at a motion picture lab, which had access to the secret military photos and movies and stuff like that. And so here it was, this Nazi was right in the middle of Pittsburgh, and I was working with him and his daughter, and I'm going, what's up? But back then, that was in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. I had no idea all the stuff I know now, but they definitely came over here and took over on all these different levels. So we're basically, a Nazi state. And the best way to keep a slave is you don't know you're a slave. You don't know what's going on. So we don't know what's going on, but it's starting to come out.
If you give any credence at all to the reports of the ICC, the International Corporate Conglomerate that has a secret space program and so forth, the Nazis are basically the power in the local solar system. I don't know how much credence you give to that sort of stuff, Brad, but what's your take on it anyhow?
I have to think that if anybody had first shot at the moon and Mars, it's probably Nazi Germany, because they were already testing this stuff from backward engineered craft in the 1930s, such as the craft that came down in 1933 in the Black Forest. Plus Mussolini, the fascist leader of Italy, also had a craft that came down in northern Italy that he let the Third Reich scientists examine and even take back to Germany. Plus you have the Vril Society and the mediums post-World War I that were meeting in a hunting lodge in Berchtesgaden, Germany. This I outline in my book, Future Esoteric. And then some of the more esoteric subjects that were pursued by the Nazis in my book, Modern Esoteric. But they had been collecting blueprints both telepathically and from physical craft for decades. So it's very likely that they are the first force out into outer space and beat us to the moon by decades. There's even some reports that there is evidence that they were on the dark side of the moon, that they even co-opted an older base and made it their own, and not sure if they're still there or not, but yeah. And what you also hear too with abduction scenarios, there could be like a human in Nazi uniform talking in German language too. That's often talked about with abduction scenarios. So there's a lot of corroborating evidence about that.
And then you go back to what was it, the Mayans or the Incans? They were a spacefaring race, and they're one of the secret space program forces. Which one was that, honey? The Incans? Oh no,
what happened is during when Thoth, as Quetzalcoatl or Kukulkan, was living with the Maya in Yucatan, basically he chose 12 children and to educate them, and he was against human sacrifice and all this sort of stuff, but he made them able to skyfare. And the Lord Palenque, for example, is a sarcophagus shows him at the controls of his Vimana. And so we know that. So the story that we get from super soldiers and others that have said that they've been part of the ICC is that the Maya continue to be spacefaring and rescue people from the corporate slave bases and are rehabilitating those who they can rescue for the time when Earth shall be peaceful again, or else helping them settle in their new places if Earth doesn't make it. That's the story I heard.
Yeah, fascinating. And it makes sense on many levels when you hear about some of the other high-tech, even the weapons, the super weapons that they were going to use against the Allies, the first to start testing nuclear bombs. In fact, it was one of the U-boats that surrendered right around the end of the war had one of the top scientists that we needed very badly for the fuses on the nuclear bombs in the Manhattan Project. And they got him. And then within months, they were doing nuclear tests in White Sands, New Mexico followed by the nuclear bombing in Japan. So they got those guys, and they got their uranium. We didn't have uranium. Germany had uranium. They were already enriching it. They were so far advanced from anything we had in the 1940s. It really makes sense that we would want to collect all these scientists. Even though they were working on weapons of mass destruction, that kind of went into the paranoia of the Cold War, and the Soviets too. They got some Nazi scientists as well as the Brits. But we got more of them. Yeah. We got most of them. And we gave them new identities, or in some cases, they kept their same names, like Werner von Braun or Hermann Oberth, who went and started NASA. And even both of them admitted where the Germans got their high technology, as I outlined in Future Esoteric. They said, we were helped from the people above. We got help from the others. So they fully acknowledged that they had not just come up with this technology by themselves, but had co-opted it and backward engineered it from ET technology.
Fascinating. So what do we do with all this? When we get the realization of what's been going on, what can we even do about it? It's seems kind of hopeless, but maybe there's some answers. What did you discover about all this when you were down there? Did this start to make sense to you? Did it start to gel?
It really did. Picture? Yeah, and it did link up a bunch of data points. I mean, what do we do about this? Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know, but I think the truth shall set you free. So all we can do is try to just understand all this stuff. And, you know, as much as it outrages us to think that fugitive Nazis never were put on trial and got away with it, well, what does that mean to us today? Well, maybe their legacy still exists. So maybe it's up to us to try to understand what's going on in the world today. And this is the crux of both of my esoteric books, to try to understand who is ruling over this planet Earth zoo, and we're the animals in the cage who sometimes get a glimpse of the outside, and we're wondering what the big picture is, right? You know, that's why we go to conferences and put it on, and we're just trying to make sense of it all. But our keepers in the zoo aren't too happy that we're waking up to their scheme.
Well, so let's look at that. You know, so we're going to be coming in 4 minutes to the break, and then we can continue after the break, just a 5-minute break, and then we only get you for another half hour. But I know they're going to be talking about that at Contact in the Desert. I'm not going to be able to make it this year, but I'll be there next year. But, you know, Nassim Harriman's going to be there. I'm not sure who else is going to be there. I have to go look, but you're going to be there. And this is one of the hottest topics, Antarctica. And you're the one that went down there.
Yeah,
so I'm sure you're going to be on the panels, and they're going to be wanting to, you know, because everybody else is getting it second and third hand. We're getting reports from people that are reporting, you know, so you're like the reporter down on the spot. And so how are you going to address this when we get there? Yeah.
Johnny on the spot. Yeah, I really am. And I went down there, and I even announced it before I went down there to the Contact audience that I would be looking into these mysteries. Well, I just have to tell the truth. And what the truth is not a lot of people could corroborate with what I was trying to discover or find any kind of data points. But that's not to say that this stuff doesn't exist. It's not to say it couldn't be hidden under the ice. It's not to say that the secret military operations do take place, even though they are prohibited per the Antarctica Treaty. Now, one thing I did find, and this is absolutely verifiable, there is a huge no-fly zone over a portion of the South Pole. The western portion is a no-fly zone even for any kind of craft coming in for supply. But the thing is, there are very few craft that even go there. So why even have a no-fly zone? They say it's because it's a clean air zone. But they also have these snowcats that bring up all the supplies to the South Pole from McMurdo, and those things are dirty as hell. So it's not really a clean air zone. And there are so few flights that having a no-fly zone doesn't make any sense. Because starting right about now, the South Pole is going into twilight. and in another month it goes into total darkness for 4 months. They have one sunrise and one sunset at the South Pole. 2 months of twilight on either side, and then 4 months of total light, and then 4 months of total darkness. And the no-fly zone is in effect all the time. So this does correspond with where the hole in the ice is, with what Admiral Byrd said. He flew a plane into it when he was doing flight missions over the South Pole. And then you have other whistleblowers, including one guy, I think his name was Brian S., that talked to Linda Moulton Howe, and I think he is totally reputable. Everything, all his logistics and data points that I know about how to get around Antarctica totally match up. Flight times, distances, crafts used, and this and that. Her latest whistleblowers, I have a few problems with some of the logistics of what they say they found in their mission. If you want to talk about that in the next segment, we can do that. But
okay.
That's what I'm going to have to say down at Contacts is just, this is the truth. This is what I found, and this isn't what I found.
Excellent. So we'll be coming up on the music in a couple seconds here. We'll be back in 5 minutes, and we're going to continue talking about Antarctica with Brad Olsen.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
In breaking news, a visiting Syrian diplomat reported today that their population is evolving rapidly and advancing into a fifth-dimensional consciousness. They are seeking peace with all cosmic cultures, which may mean that the Earth will be asked to join the prestigious Galactic Federation of Light Alliances. Please join Debbie West and Michael Hathaway on Lost Knowledge, Saturdays, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in Studio A, for the latest breaking news on the Star Visitor's peaceful contact and the ongoing project of cleansing the Earth.
Who are you? I am the architect. I created the Matrix. I've been waiting for you. Why am I here? You are the eventuality of an anomaly which, despite my sincerest efforts, I have been unable to eliminate from what is otherwise a harmony of mathematical precision, which has led you inexorably here. You haven't answered my question. The Matrix is older than you know, as you are undoubtedly gathering. The anomaly is systemic, creating fluctuations in even the most simplistic equation. Choice. The problem is choice.
Right here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. Be here Wednesday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern Time for Private Eye Matrix Revealed with Monique Lessin.
Hello, my name is Mr. Rowe. I am the host of Reality Extraction on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. I utilize logic, intellect, and magic to methodically atomize, vivisect, analyze, examine, study, scrutinize, and extract an essence of reality from a fog of illusion and confusion. You can find me on Studio B every Thursday at 1700 hours Pacific Time. That's 8 p.m. Eastern. No topic taboo, no subject too strange. I strive to take a neutral standpoint during the dissection of the topic at hand. That's Reality Extraction with Mr. Rowe on Revolution Radio.
This is Thomas, a.k.a. a Mad Painter. I'd like you to join me Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Open Canvas. Don't forget to bring an open mind.
Yes, folks, that's right. Bring an open mind to an open canvas. Again, that is Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. UFOs to government corruption. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
Thanks for tuning in to Revolution Radio. Here at Revolution Radio, we are listener-sponsored and commercial-free. But there still are bills to pay. In order to raise some needed funds to cover the cost, our station is offering a silver special. In the continental United States for a $60 donation, or in Alaska, Hawaii, or Canada for a $70 donation, we will send you an uncirculated 2018 1-ounce pure silver eagle. The $70 donation, the extra 10 is to cover shipping, by the way, outside of the continental United States. When making the donation, you must put Silver Eagle promo in the notes on the donation. And thank you for tuning in to Revolution Radio at revolution.radio and freedomslips.com. Without you, there is no us. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Collision courses back. Schedule will be on Revolution Radio every Saturday night, 6 to 8 p.m. You get outer space. You get honest answers, real researchers, truthful answers, and a place to engage with questions. Take part in the discussion. Revolution Radio on freedomslips.com hosts Collision Course every Saturday from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. Pacific Time.
It happens more often than we can imagine. In my case, I was sitting at home, and out of nowhere, I just started feeling uncomfortable. Then it got worse, and I started perspiring. I tried to ignore it, but I waited too long. The chest pain came as we were driving to the hospital emergency. I felt my life clock begin to tick. I barely survived. There was lots of damage done to my heart. What do I do now? I was lucky. I took a leap of faith and tried a 7-herb formula with hawthorn, garlic, cayenne, and more called Extendivite. Herbs have been used for thousands of years to keep us healthy. If you're not using Extendivite as a preventative supplement, maybe it's time to start. To order, call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Aloha. Boy, I'm getting a wonky feedback. But anyway, aloha and back. Welcome back to Stargate to the Cosmos. This is Janet Kara Lessin, your host, with our co-host, Dr. Sasha Lessin, and producer Thomas Becker. And our guest is Brad Olsen, and we're talking about the trip to South America and Antarctica and all the ruins down there. But before we get back to our show, I'd like to remind you to go over to that special button on revolution.radio, the donate button, and please do make your donation to Revolution Radio, because we really need it and we appreciate your donations. And a Mad Painter, Thomas Becker, what's going on with our fundraising this month? How are we doing?
Well, we need 2550, and we got 672, which is a little bit low. I mean, we should be pulling in about 100.
Yeah.
So please donate, people.
Okay.
Sure appreciate it.
Please, please, please. Yes, we just had to get a new server, so help us out. Okay, Sasha, what would you like to say before we bring back Brad for about a half an hour? And he's got to go to another show.
Yeah, I find it really useful. We were talking about how the Nazis had infiltrated the United States and everything that the world governments do, and I find it useful to think as without, so within, and that we may all have a Nazi part of us that we could say, what in the world does this part really need? Not what does it want, but what does it need? And it might be, something like efficiency, or, if you go deep enough, can we find in ourselves the part of us that's Nazi-like? And if we can come to peace with that, will that help us make contact with the other instead of eternal enmity? And can we realize that we're part of an ongoing system that can be win-win and transcendent? That's sort of the thought I have about that. Kick that around, if you would, Brad.
Oh, sure. That idea brought to mind a John Lennon quote, and he said, when you have an enemy that wants to poke you and provoke you and tug at your beard, they want to get you to do the same. They want to get you to violence and poke them back and prod them back and fight back. But then that's where they got you, he says. The only thing that they can't match is when you make fun of them and when you use sarcasm. And that's when the whole deep state shadow government, all these people who have been pulling the strings behind the back, and the Nazis have been a part of it too, even after World War II, that when you make fun of them and you expose them and you make jokes about them, and as much as we're all really disappointed, they don't have a way of fighting back on us, because once people start to understand that this exists out there and that there are real keepers of the zoo, and there always have been, then you can get the big picture in all this. And once you open the box, once you open Pandora's box, you can't go back in. But then it becomes your power. Then you start to learn about these subjects, and you never can go back. Let's say the government comes out with a new excuse for 9/11, for example. Well, if you know it's already a false flag, you're not going to believe what they have to say. And you're only just going to continue to collect information. This is also true in all of these fields that we research. With UFOs as well, and also what we hear about Antarctica. We just have to collect as much information and use it to build our own worldview. And that has a dark side to it too, and we've seen it generation after generation, century after century. It's always been present here on Earth, and now we have a way of at least confronting it and understanding what it is. Before, we never really had this chance, or we'd be put to death pretty quick.
Wow. Janet, I know you want to say something about this too.
Well, I'm having trouble hearing, so I missed a lot of the wonderful things you said. But I think it's coming to a head. That's why it's really important what you're doing, your travels, pulling it together, especially at these conferences. That's where everybody gets together on endless panels for 3 or 4 or 5 days or whatever it is, and we start connecting the dots and the pieces of the puzzle, and that's what we do on these radio shows. So I really appreciate you doing it. But we do have, it seems to be coming to a head here. The polarity is the light; it's getting lighter and darker and extreme, and we wonder if we're going to make it. But these things, if they were to come forth, like what's really been happening in Antarctica and what is happening to this day, and about the settlements, and I don't know. I just hope that piece comes out at this conference. And what are the other researchers saying? Because you were with Nassim and a couple of the other researchers.
Yeah.
What are they saying about what's going on?
Oh, we're all on the same
you have
page.
to share some time with them.
everybody understands
what did they
of
say?
a UFO reality. Well, because we all understand there's a big picture here, and we have been cheated out of the truth for so long, and history is being rewritten, and we see that many pieces have not been told. So it's not so much that we've been lied to, but we have about certain parts of history. It's more importantly what has not been told and what has not been understood and what has not been learned pretty much up until now, and it continues to grow. So that's why censorship is a very dangerous thing in our age, that if any of us were to be silenced, it would be a great disservice, because look, we're all adults here. We can all make rational decisions. We can all discern this information as cognizant adults who do this. This is what we do as highly functioning mental human beings, is having the ability to discern. And nobody should have a right to say, well, I don't want you to hear that person's opinion. I mean, it harkens back to the book burnings of old. And it's happening again now in the internet age. So we're still struggling with this darkness. I mean, I don't think we have it beat. I would love to say in our lifetimes we're going to see it defeated, but it's had a stranglehold on this planet for a long, long time. And these bloodline families, they stick together and they have the resources. And I would even say and could argue that they have an extraterrestrial connection, a malevolent ET power that has been on this planet for thousands of years, and use the high-level officials as more of the colonels and the captains. But the real generals who call the shots on this planet may not be entirely human.
And I agree. I mean, I work with the whistleblowers and I get all the experiencers, and there seems to be something there. And at the same time, there seems to be a force for good that is, holding the other end of the continuum. What I wonder, and there is some infighting in the extraterrestrial community, can we get unified enough in our vision and in our support for one another and get past our egos to get the information out? Because I think a lot of times it's like we're shooting ourselves in our own foot, right? When we get competitive, when we really, as a community, need to unify and put all the pieces together and get the story out. I don't think anybody has the comprehensive story. It's still about money and coming from egos. And that's what I observe. And I'm kind of sitting out on the sidelines this year, and it's frustrating because I've got, getting over a medical condition. But, so please call me when you're done with the conference. I want to know what happened.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you a good recap. Well, I'm going down to the 5D conference next weekend. Yeah, I'll be driving down a week from today. So it's weekend after next, April 19, 2021. And I'm giving my Anomalies of Antarctica talk in the main auditorium room. Also doing Mysteries of South America talk. And I'm moderating a secret space program panel with Randy Kramer and James Rink and a few others. Penny Bradley. That's
wonderful.
5D, yeah. So some of the speakers from your guys' conference are going to head down there, and we're going to see each other for the first time since. And I'm also on the UFO panel. Yeah, so we're all going to get our talk on there. We'll miss you guys. I know you're in Hawaii. It's not an easy trip to make sometimes. But
we'll be there next year.
Be there in spirit.
I'm just recovering. I have a medical condition. I can't travel for the next couple of months. But then after that, I'm hoping to get out in the fall. But so I'm not going to go into that. But anyway, you guys have to carry on for me and, put out the feelers. So connecting the dots, getting it out. I'm still working on getting all the videos up. That's proven to be, post-production expenses I didn't anticipate. So it's a slow process. But what do you think will emerge? That was like October to November, December, January, February, March. We have, between these things, we have 4 or 5 months. Do you anticipate anything new coming out in the 5D conference with the people that are showing up?
Well, I'm interested to hear any developments or to increase my understanding of what it took for men who are my age, who have done the 20 and back and have served their time in the secret space program, how they're basically adjusting in the world today. And how is it that you could go from a spacefaring interplanetary human being and come back to Earth and almost be like anonymous and called crazy for having these memories of what you had done. It's almost as if I'd just come back from Antarctica and I'm telling you guys about it, but it seems so incredulous. You said, "Oh, you're crazy. Nobody's ever been to Antarctica. What are you talking about?" Yeah, so how to grapple with that and move on with your life, but also to help educate others. So I really commend those individuals from the Secret Space program who are coming out and telling us about it. And I would imagine this is just the tip of the iceberg, that there must be a lot more that wish to do it. And I remember at the Stargate to the Cosmos conference you guys put on in Albuquerque, where I was a speaker, that there were people in the audience that would come out. And a lot of times some of the audience members are great to meet because they don't want to be public with what they know, but feel like, hey, you seem like someone I could trust, or I want to talk to about what I've gone through, and then to hear their story. And that's why I really love these conferences. It's the people you meet as well as a download of information. I mean, sometimes it's like you're watching YouTube video one after another, like binge watching for 8 days, going to these conferences. But then to be able to ask questions and then hang out and meet some of the speakers afterwards, also a real treat.
Oh, I'd love that. Yes, I do. Well, and since the conference, I've had dozens of people write to me. And please, if you're out there listening and you've got a story to tell, and you can tell it either, with your real name or anonymously. I have, I'd say about 10 to 20 more Secret Space Program people, and they're just not ready to come out with their stories. So if we could ever get it to the point where people feel safe enough, comfortable enough, or get the therapy they need, because a lot of them are destabilized, we could probably get this incredible grand picture of what's really going on this planet and in the cosmos. And there would be almost like your disclosure, because testimonials, count as in a court of law, right? If you have people, if you have thousands of people showing up and they're all doing their testimonials, then, there's a real story there. It can't be dismissed. But when you have 1 or 2 or 5, there's just like 5 people at a conference, somebody can just dismiss them. But so I'm looking for that day, and that's what I keep holding space for, and I'm continuing the work. But we really appreciate, like yourself, getting out there, the boots on the ground type of people, doing the research, having the ability to put it together, connect the dots, and present it in a logical fashion that you can get through to people and educate people. That's critical. So you're going to be doing this. So tell us a little bit more. You've got the presentations at the 5D conference, and you've got presentations at Contact in the Desert. Tell us a little more about what you're going to be talking about and what you hope to do, what you hope to accomplish at these conferences.
Yeah, and I've just in 2 since I've been back as well. I did Beyond the Matrix in Sedona in middle of March, and then right after that, the Human Origins conference in Rio Rancho. And I'm going to be doing Human Origins next year, so I'm already booking my conferences for the next year, and I've got another few to go after Contact in the Desert. But basically, my lectures for 2019 and 2020 are the Anomalies of Antarctica, and that presentation starts out with here's all the known science, as well as some of the things that are being discovered at the South Pole, such as cosmic rays coming out of the Earth instead of into the Earth, but out of the Earth at a 30-degree angle, as well as neutrinos that are passing straight through the Earth and coming out at the South Pole. So these are really fascinating, groundbreaking experiments, a new kind of physics that are really defying the old physics. So everything is being redefined. I mean, even the story of the science of what's going on down there is utterly fascinating. But the second half of my talk, because I'll be at 5D and Contact the Desert and Human Origins and others, is about the antediluvian civilizations, evidence for UFO bases, craft under the ice, pyramids sticking out. And I'll advance the data points that I've spoke about tonight, as well as some other ones we didn't have time to get into, as well as saying that maybe this is speculation. If we can't find it, or if I couldn't find it, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And here is what is believed to be in these locations. So I want to give the audience what they came to hear, but I'll have to preface it by saying maybe since I didn't actually find someone who would tell me where the logistics of the GNA to go find the ship under the ice, but I have some good places to go and look, and I've already been in touch with one producer in Hollywood that sells his films to Nat Geo that has approached me about setting up a trip next season through McMurdo and then to some other site. So I may be going back to Antarctica next season. Then it would really be my specialty. Wow. But I feel like spending 26 days on the Drake and going over to Antarctica for 15 full days, stepping foot on the Palmer Peninsula and going to Palmer Base, which is very difficult to even get permission to do. But it was largely through my persistence that got us permission to come ashore. And we got a tour of the Palmer Base and met the station commander, and I talked to him for quite a while. And we spent the 2 nights there and traveled around and explored some of the islands, penguin colonies there, elephant seals, glaciers all over the place. Just fascinating. Sasha, you mentioned earlier about some more evidence of the global warming, and very much so at the Palmer Base. It's quite evident. They even have paintings of the big glacier right outside of the bay in front of their base. And the painting from the 1980s shows an ice shelf that covered an island that was only exposed about 15 years ago. They knew it exists, and there was a branch of snow that came off of the Anvers Island glacier that connected to it. And on Pi Day, only a few years ago, that ice bridge collapsed, and they called it Pi Island. So new islands are even being discovered, and new lands, just like the Perry Reese map that showed islands around Antarctica that are covered in the ice. That's absolutely true, and it absolutely is changing very rapidly in climate down there. But what's so terribly interesting is they've also come out with studies, including NASA and other scientific organizations, that measure the ice. Different parts of Antarctica are actually raising in ice levels, while other parts of Antarctica are retreating glaciers and melting at a very fast clip. So when I was coming back from this trip just in the beginning of March, I had a 12-hour layover in Miami Beach, so I went down to the beach and hung out all day. And I can tell you there is no sea level rise. And Miami Beach was one of those bellwether places that would be the first to go underwater. Well, there's plenty of land there, and no signs of any ocean level rises. So maybe Mother Nature has this way of balancing itself, where one region is melting very quickly, another region is gaining in ice and not raising the sea levels.
Wow.
So, Sasha, are you seeing signs of the coast eroding here in Maui? Because you go to the beaches a lot.
Yeah, especially when there's really big waves. But hey, Brad, before I lose you, if you were just an observer and you were visiting, and just like it was a foreign place, your home city, San Francisco. What kind of a place is it? What do you get that's happening there? I can tell you, when I go back to LA, I feel like crying about all the people without homes living under the place.
Yeah, that breaks my heart too, and it shouldn't be that way. Humanity should have leave no one behind policy, and there's still starvation in the world and great deprivation, and I don't like to see that myself either. But what I do in San Francisco is I produce one of the co-producers and the founder of the Weird Street Faire, which is coming up in 3.5 weeks in downtown San Francisco. Wow. Yeah, started this event 20 years ago. It's our 20-year anniversary. I've got a great team that I work with on it every year. I still design the poster every year. And we're going to have 9 stages of music downtown San Francisco at Howard and 2nd Street on Sunday, May 5th from noon to 8 p.m. It's like a day at Burning Man. You guys would totally love it. Would love to have you come out if you'd want to come on Sunday, May 5th.
Who knows? Maybe we'll make it.
Who knows? Well, let me know and I'll get you passes. And certainly meet up with you, give you some drink tokes, and make sure you find a cool place to hang out.
All right.
That sounds like something Sasha would love. So you're doing the conferences, and are you going to be doing any movies or additional books, or what's your plans for?
Well, I'm right now still just getting caught up in life, trying to finish my taxes actually on time before they're due on Monday. Should have it by tonight, though. I was working on it as we were setting up for this interview. So I just got to get my life back together. I want to buy a house and start my office again, and then go into production mode. But my third book in the Esoteric series is called Beyond Esoteric. It is about 85% complete. I just need a good solid month or two of work time to put it all together and get it done. Until then, I'm still moving around. I'm going to conferences, and I've just come back from this monumental trip, and I had to put together my talks for that and some other publishing work that I do with CCC Publishing. All these deadlines that keep distracting me and having me do things that I have to do because it's the time to do them. So when I get done, I will get this done. And we just got all of Leo Zagami's books published, including Confessions of an Illuminati, coming out in a second edition. And he's going to be speaking in July and looking for speaking engagements here in America. And so I'm trying to help out with that and my own speaking gigs and interview requests. I mean, there's only so many hours in a day. Yeah, and I still want to go skiing. I'm not going to start my own radio station again, not for any time in the foreseeable future. I miss doing it. It's great. It's fun, and I love talking to you. But I'm just so busy and got to get caught up, and I need to get my home base and new office set up before I commit to any big projects.
And you're going to buy a house, so that's a big
that's
deal.
What
You got to find the right place.
That's the deal. Find the right place. That's going to
good.
Yeah.
And you and Emily are doing well.
And we're doing well. We're going to be together in a week at the 5D conference in Vegas. And then she's going to come out for How Weird in 3.5 weeks. And then we'll be together at Contact in the Desert. It'll be our 1-year anniversary. And what a year it's been. Yeah.
What a wild year. Congratulations.
What a wild year indeed. It's been a good one.
Well, we just have a couple more minutes with you before you have to go. So what are the final words you want to tell our listeners, and what do you want to say about your books?
Sure. Yeah, I'm the author of 9 books. I've won awards for several of them, including my Sacred Places series of books, which was when I did travel guides. I traveled around the world, self-financed for 3 years, and I wrote my first book called World Stompers, a global travel manifesto to help people understand how to do it and go out and do it themselves. That's why when I take on a big trip like South America, I have a pretty good idea how to do it and get it done without problems or losses or police intervention or anything like that. No bad things happen. So I've been traveling my whole adult life since I was in my young 20s. And this has given me a great background for writing first travel guidebooks to sacred places. And that's pretty much what I still enjoy doing while traveling. And that was the gist of the Nassim Haramein trip to Peru and Bolivia, was they were visiting 3 or 4 sacred places every day. So I got to include that in my whole portfolio of places I've been, and now all 7 continents. But the subjects that are near and dear and true to my heart are, like you guys, these esoteric subjects, the hidden knowledge, the who runs the world, the ET intervention with the world, for better or for worse, and just all of life's great mysteries. And that is what has led me to my 2 books in the Esoteric series, Modern Esoteric, Beyond Our Senses, and Future Esoteric, The Unseen Realms. And the third and final book will be called Beyond Esoteric, The Ultimate Journey. And since I don't repeat any information, I'm collecting new information to put this out. And since Future Esoteric came out in 2012 and Modern Esoteric 2 years after that, I'm going to wait till 2020 for Beyond Esoteric. And that's a hard deadline I'm setting for myself. I will get it done. It will get out there. And I know some people are waiting for me to get done with it. And it will be good, and it will be done.
And when you get it out, we'll have you back. We'll have you back, I'm sure, before then. So, okay, well, I guess we'll let you go. I know you've got to get over to the other show. So we've really been, it's been a delight having you, Sasha, and imagine anything to say to Brad before he departs.
Thanks a lot, Brad. It was really cool rapping with you.
Oh, always great to talk to you guys. It was my pleasure. And look forward to the next time I see you and talk to you next.
Okay, thanks,
Cool.
here. Take
All right,
care.
have a good night. Ciao.
Yeah.
Thank you. Aloha. Bye-bye.
Aloha.
Okay. So,
All right.
aloha. All right. All right, sweetheart. It's me, you, and a man. What are we going to talk about for the last half hour?
Well, what I thought would be interesting to talk about is if you would tell us what it's like to be Nima, to come from your that higher self that sort of gets the whole picture, and tell us what you see about us Earthlings.
Well, I've actually been writing a book lately, and I think I'm channeling information, but it's more than channeling. It's like remote viewing and putting myself in the place of that person and then allowing the information to come through. And when I do this process and then I take a look at what I've written, it's like, wow, this is way beyond me, what my perception of myself, way beyond information that I know. And it's coming from like a higher self level that's able to access the information and assemble it in a logic and sequence that is just not known to Janet. So it's like, it's like I have all these split personalities, but that's what I've been doing lately because I feel a level of frustration with where our planet's been going and its politics and its treatments of our fellow human beings. As I identify with Nima is a goddess. She's the one that was the mother of humanity. She literally is everybody's mother. Everybody has her DNA within them. She's not only the one that contributed her DNA, but she's the scientist that figured out how this works. And there's a part of me on the soul essence that is a fractal of Nima and totally identifies with that. And that's what's behind my frustration when I see it's like I'm mom and a mother might have, a lot of children and they're all unique and different, but they want all their children to get along, and a mother gets upset when one child is treating another child poorly. So that's part of my frustration. Part of it is also that Janet, I imprinted all this stuff when I came in 1954 America. I was rebelling against my conservative Republican parents who, looking back on my early years, were actually pretty racist. And my download that I get from extraterrestrials, and then, being at my conference in October, I sat beside Randy Kramer, and Randy Kramer basically said that the Earth is going to be quarantined as long as we can't accept extraterrestrials, and the extraterrestrials don't believe that humanity will be able to accept them because we can't even accept our fellow human beings. We don't treat each other fairly. We have a wide differences between male and female and how women are regarded, different colors are regarded, and the whole religious psychological manipulation has been pitting us against each other. Even the whole concepts of patriotism and countries has been pitting us against each other. And the extraterrestrials just look at this and they go, what? And, how are we going to come down and, treat these people as equals when they can't treat each other as equals? So that's part of my frustration. What do you want to say about all this, Sasha?
Well, okay. That's interesting. Wow, that's a lot. So I've been working at, or what I've been experiencing is I've been channeling too. I've been working on channeling Sasha, and what I've come to the conclusion is, yes, I have many lineages. I've learned from all the traditions and all the information that's available to a modern professor in this day and age. And I realize that I need not channel or be or embody any of them, but rather I'm in a unique position of being Sasha right now, right here in this place that I am. And I am just so in awe of this wonderful, wonderful life that I have at this moment. I am so happy and fulfilled. And yeah, people's got problems, and that's our challenge, is to deal with them too. But that's what our joy is too. It ain't the goal, it's the walking it. And walking it is breathing it, and breathing it is being it. And we're here now, so dig it. That's what I get when I challenge. When I channel Sasha.
And Matt, I've heard you call yourself an old hippie. What does that mean? When you say I'm an old hippie, I'm just an old hippie. What was it like for you being a young hippie, and now you're an old hippie?
Well, I believe in everything that you pretty much will believe in. I don't believe in any kind of wars or racism or anything like that. But we come since the '60s. Most of the hippie movement is really pretty much dropped down and dropped out completely. With it ended up with the Grateful Dead people,
Yeah.
But you still have to deal with the reality that other people have created around us, regardless of how you want it to be.
So what does that mean?
Well, you have to conform to certain standards regardless. I mean, if you live in a civilization, you have to have a job, you have to have money in order to survive.
Right.
So you have to play their game to a certain amount, like it or not.
So we've all played the game. I mean, I don't know what you did in your youth. I worked many jobs over my... I started working when I was 15, I think. What was your first job, Matt? What did you do?
I dyed oak leaves.
And what was that for? Dyed oak leaves for
a floral company. You ever see the little oak leaves that are all different colors? Red, yellow.
Okay.
So it was kind of a hippie thing.
And you've been in the same part of the world most of your life, or did you move around?
No,
Where were you born?
Lived in Florida and Georgia mostly. Born in New York.
Right. And then you've been with your wife a long time, right?
39 years in July.
Wow. So how far did the oak leaf dyeing get you, or did you end up going into another
I was just
occupation?
It was my first job. I'd done plenty of other things between then, and I settled on being a house painter.
Oh, so you did house painting.
Yeah, I've done house painting for 45 years.
Oh, my God. That's a long time.
I'm pretty much semi-retired now. I work a little bit, but not a whole bunch.
Not a whole lot, yeah. I think we all did those jobs. I mean, how do you not work? I guess some people get through life and they don't work, but we were just having a meeting today, and you end up doing these jobs, and they just don't feel like that's what your life is about. Did you ever feel really fulfilled in your jobs and what you were doing?
Well, that's the reason I stayed painting, because I can turn around and take a old rundown house and make it look brand new. I make the world pretty.
That's good. Do you turn houses around? Do you help improve them and then they sell?
No, I just painted them. I had my own business for about 25 years.
Yeah. So, Sasha, your turn. Let's ask these other questions, because we have another 15 minutes. Ask us both a question, Sash.
Okay. What subject is a burning issue for you, and that you just know that everybody would just really like you to rap about?
And who are you talking to? Me?
Both of you. Both. What do you think that the people that are listening right now would really like to hear from you?
Okay. I don't
checks
know
in the mail?
for me. The checks in the mail.
Checks in the mail.
I get too political, and then most people don't agree with my politics, so I get so frustrated. And so, but there are some people that agree with my politics, but I just feel like an alien. I look at this planet, and I go, what am I doing here? I don't identify with. I felt more comfortable years ago, but now the way the world's turned, it's like I just don't know what to do with it anymore. I want to go on a beach and relax, but I'm over here where I could go on a beach and relax, and I just get so wound up on it because I guess I love my planet. I'm a citizen of this planet, and I really love the Earth, and I just want to see her whole and happy again, and it just doesn't feel that way for me individually and collectively, because wherever I go, it's like, it reminds me of what my parents told me the world was like before World War II, and this unrest. Now, that's a question for you. So, Sasha, you were alive. You were born the year before World War II started. So you're imprinting your primal learning at your parents, when you were very young and you were dependent on your parents for existence, was at the height of a world war. And so I'm sure you felt the angst of being actively in that. Now, when my parents returned, I got the brunt of being raised by parents that were struggling horrendously from PTSD. Now, Matt, did your parents go to war? And were they either, my mother didn't go to war, but she was struggling because she went through the Depression. And she went through the Depression without a father. Her father died. And so there was the single women trying to get through with no, breadwinner. What happened to your parents during
my father never served in the military. He had some kind of medical problem.
Oh my goodness! Wow. So, and what did your mother do?
My grandfather was in World War I.
Right, but you're too removed from that. But your father. See, there's a difference when you're not around someone that's struggling from PTSD. So you grew up more relaxed, probably because he was more relaxed, right?
Well, I don't know. My parents weren't together for very long. I've been on my own since I was 14.
Oh, okay. So I know people like that.
Yeah, I had a job, went to school, and all that stuff. At a young age by myself.
Oh, that's right. We're talking about you didn't even know what year you were born for sure.
Yeah, well, I could find out. I got my birth certificate and stuff. I just don't pay no attention to it because it don't really matter to me.
Right.
It's just one of them things. It's like a driver's license. I ain't got one of them either, but I don't drive, so why do I have to have one?
Right. That's interesting. You don't drive. Yeah. Well, Sash, what do you want to share?
Oh, well, if we're talking about it, my childhood felt really different than yours, sweetie. It's like I felt secure. I felt happy as long as I could be around my parents who loved each other and thought it was so much fun to have a little boy. I was really happy. And my dad was rich and my mom was good looking. And I lived next to people from Oklahoma and they were fun. And I loved growing up in Torrance, California. And I had a happy life, and I didn't do a job I hated. I did jobs I loved. I was director of counseling for the Waikiki Drug Clinic, and I taught anthropology, and I got to go to Fiji and Tonga. And what the heck? I know people are suffering for some reason. It's all. I'm so happy. I'm sorry if that makes anyone. I'm happy.
I know it pisses me off. You had such a wonderful life.
Oh, I'm happy with my life the way it is now. I got no problem. Everybody's worried about where things come from. I don't worry about it. It always works out.
Yeah, it's just different.
I don't let the stress get to me, and that's what a lot of people's problem is with their health is their stress level is so high. Yeah.
Well, I don't process stress as well as you guys. and that's for sure. Sasha has no stress, and I have lots of stress, and I always sweat the small stuff, but I get a lot done, so I do accomplish things.
That's my wife. She stresses over everything.
Yeah, see, that's
I mean, if the butter's almost gone, she's worried, you know.
Somebody get to the store. We're gonna run out. Yeah. Well, you know, and my mother was a Depression era person, right? So that kind of filtered down. And you don't think those things affect you, but you know, when you grow up with someone who's always in lack consciousness and worried about shortages, and we were very dirt poor. Sasha was rich. He's more relaxed. I'm more like, you know, the sky's falling. How do we fix it? What do we do to repair it? So anyway, it's just the way of being. But overall, I'm very blessed. I live in Maui. What can I complain about? I call you guys back in the mainland, and you're dealing with snow and cold and rain and all that stuff. And I'm just going, yeah, the sky's blue again today.
No snow for me.
Yeah, no snow for me. I'm so sorry you're dealing with that hurricane barreling down on you.
That I have trouble with.
Yeah, we rarely get a hurricane barreling down on us, and they seem to get stalled out in the ocean when they don't make it to land.
I'm not sitting on top of a volcano either.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I think if it really blew like Krakatoa, we probably wouldn't even notice, you know, wouldn't even wake up, right? If it came like
it's not explosive. It's a flow, and it hasn't stopped. It's venting continually. The recent big flows in the Big Island is because Apuna Geothermal had made these underwater caverns when they were doing their flushing to get the geothermal. They made these holes, and that's why you had a collapse now. But venting means it's unlikely that you're going to get a great big explosion of volcano like Krakatoa.
Well, what made it like Pompeii? Those people are frozen.
Yeah, they're totally different types of volcanoes.
Yeah. So what kind of volcano is that results in Krakatoa and Pompeii, and where these people get kind of like stuck in time, and all of a sudden
cinder cone, I think they're called.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Yeah, and in terms of Pompeii, the big shot architects that looked at the system said, "Shit, some of the vents are not venting, some of them are coming up for something terrible is happening. You better do something." And the officials knew that something terrible was happening and that everybody was in danger, but they didn't know what to do about it or what to do fast enough. But they knew it was coming.
Oh, they knew it was coming. So how did we know that they knew that? Did some historical records?
Yeah. I've read a bunch of historical records of people that were saying this particular channel is no longer operative. There's lava going through this one. Then it was messing everything up, and they were concerned that something terrible is going to happen. It's whole system's unstable under here.
Yeah. So we'll probably just stay here, Matt, until something happens. But I don't think it's going to really happen. But some people get.
I don't blame you. If I had a chance, I'd live there too.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, where do I go to? The California where the fire will get you and you have to run for your life, or you know.
There's something in every area.
Where do you go?
Yeah, there's something in every area. I mean, you got Tornado Alley. You shouldn't, if you spray the tornadoes, you stay out of there.
Mm-hmm. I think
here, if you're afraid of hurricanes, you don't move here.
No. Right. So of all the places, I think this is pretty darn good. But, the planet is a living being, and she has a lot of upset. So what do you think about global... I don't even want to call it warming.
Climate change.
Climate change, pollution. What do you think about that, Matt? What's your opinion?
I think we're headed for an ice age.
Oh, yeah. We had that one person saying we're going to an ice age.
Yeah, I believe so too. And I mean, the geological record shows the same thing. It warms up just before it, and it gets real hot in the summer, but your winters get more intense, and that's just what's happening.
Right. So we're gonna get so we're gonna end up with elephants with frozen food in their mouths.
I don't think it'll be that. I don't think it'll be that kind of an event. That happened. That was something else. God only knows what that was. Nibiru coming close, or somebody created a black hole. that was a catastrophic event there.
Something catastrophic. So I don't. Do you think we can predict those things, or we're just like gonna wake up someday dead? You know what I mean?
Well, the Ice Age has actually been on an actual timetable. You can look back on it and see each time it progressed and each time it went back. There's some website where you can go to that shows it.
So
and,
we can pretty much
the last one ended abruptly, and it shouldn't have, during a Younger Dryas period, which is about 12,000 years ago. And they believe it might have been a comet came in here and broke up over northeastern coast of the United States.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And one in Greenland.
Right. So we have those deep crash areas where they hit. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the northeast is all peppered with about 1,000 little circular lakes all over the place if you look at it from the sky.
Oh, wow. Okay, so that's what the cause was. I guess the moral of the story is
you just never know.
Appreciate it, and you never know.
We got 5 minutes.
About it. Okay, we got 5 minutes. Okay. Yeah. What would you like to talk about, honey, for 5 minutes? Got to eat up this 5 minutes with something interesting.
Okay.
You have something to talk about. Somebody.
I would suggest it's a really interesting thing to do. You can just do it in your head. Is imagine that you're climbing this mountain. You're going up this path. It's your path of life, and you can see up ahead of you there's a landing where you will have accomplished something or reached some kind of a goal. Sort of see your future self in that up there. And walk up to that future you that's reached some kind of accomplishment, and walk behind that version of you and get what it's like to be that part of you. And then just look back further up the mountain and realize at the very top there's something for you to do, some way for you to be. And just imagine that you walk to the top of this mountain, and there is the ultimate you, the best you can ever be. You can just get it there and let yourself go behind that form of you and experience yourself and look back at your life and what you accomplished. What love did you give and get through your existence? What did you learn? What would you like to tell everybody? Tell them now.
So, Thomas, what love did you get and give?
I'm really not sure. I hope I never reached the perfect me. Well, you know what I mean? Because it's about the journey. It's not about the destination.
Right.
I don't know. I guess my wife is the biggest love I got.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
My companionship with her.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you do the journey? Yeah, how do you do the journey then? No, that is a question though. What is your journey like? What's it like to move through your life day to day, week to week?
Chaotic and insane.
But you're so relaxed.
Well, I enjoy it.
You enjoy the chaos. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, if everything's running you don't want to be mundane. I mean, that's what most people are. They go to work, they come home, sit on the couch, pop a beer, stick their hand in the top of their trousers, and watch TV until it's time to go to bed. No, I'm not that way. No.
Challenge.
Yeah, well, you run all these shows and you're engaged with all these people and all these topics. So now my life is never a dull moment. Never, ever, ever a dull moment. Every day it's like I got a million things to do and I get about 10% done. And then carry it over to the next day. And something never get done. But it's always exciting. And I have lots of love. I have a cat colony because I live in the jungle and all these kitties come to me. And you know, and I end up feeding them. And then they get more dependent on me and they come around. But they end up being like the entertainment, the live entertainment. And who needs television with cats when you have cats? So you have a cat. You said your cat was getting in the way. You have a cat, Thomas?
Well, it's a stray cat. It just took up residence here with us.
That's what they do. They say, "You're my person."
Yeah,
like
that's pretty much what it done.
Yeah. That's good.
Which, I mean, it came to us, so we're going to feed it, you know. I mean, I'm not going to turn it away.
No, they come to you, and it's like, oh.
We always have cats do that to us.
Yeah.
Even the neighbors' cats come to the house.
I don't think you can own a cat. I think they just go where they want to go. My battery's going to go. Okay.
We got about a minute to go.
We're out of the show. Oh, there we go. We did it. We ran out the clock. Okay, everybody, thank you. Love and blessings and aloha. Thanks for joining us today.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message. Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Any commercial advertising you may hear in this program is of the sole discretion and benefit of the host of whose program you are listening to. Revolution Radio does not endorse any commercial products, nor does it accept monetary compensation for on-air advertising of commercial products, nor will it ever. We are and shall remain 100% listener supported. Any product advertising on this program are considered used at higher risk, and Revolution Radio shall not be held liable for any claims or damages received from any product advertised within this program. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Thanks for tuning in to Revolution Radio. Here at Revolution Radio, we are listener-sponsored and commercial-free. But there still are bills to pay. In order to raise some needed funds to cover the cost, our station is offering a silver special. In the continental United States for a $60 donation, or in Alaska, Hawaii, or Canada for a $70 donation, we will send you an uncirculated 2018 1-ounce pure silver Eagle. The $70 donation, the extra 10 is to cover shipping, by the way, outside of the continental United States. When making the donation, you must put Silver Eagle promo in the notes on the donation. And thank you for tuning in to Revolution Radio at revolution.radio and freedomslips.com. Without you, there is no us. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.